I do kind of wonder what happens though after the OSs do leave. Do they just revert back to Siri or something? I don't know what they.
Welcome to SinCast, presented by Cinemasins.
Everybody, welcome to the SinCast. This is Chris Atkinson from Cinemasins, joined as always by the voice of Cinemasins, Jeremy Scott.
Hello.
And from Music Video Sins, Barrett Share.
Hey.
Yeah.
I actually did the double thumbs up, too.
Hey. Today we're going to be continuing our best of the decade, the 2010s. And we'll be going over to the two regions that we haven't gotten to yet on the second round. It is the South region and the West region.
Ooh,
Yeah.
Spicy regions.
And there are
Southwest.
Yes, and there are some juicy ones in here. Some that I just like. How do you pick for real?
Yeah,
seriously. And once we get those through there, it gets to the Sweet 16, and I'm like, seriously, these are all coin tosses at this point.
Maybe that'll actually be what happens.
Yeah.
Exciting. That'll be exciting to listen to.
Yeah.
All right, everybody.
Yeah, exactly. Let's go to the South region, and let's start off with, let's do this one. The 7 seed Her, and
No.
2 seed Arrival.
No,
Whoa!
Don't do this.
See, I don't look ahead of time, and so these announcements always blow my mind because I completely forget what you've told me from last week. That is impossible.
Both of them have Amy Adams.
They do, and they both have aliens. Wait, no, that's not right.
Yeah. So
Booker said in the near future is Arrival in the future. I know it gets into time as a construct, but is it set in a near future?
No, I got the sense that it was the present.
It was the present day?
Yeah. Like, what if this happened right now?
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, there may be clues somewhere in there that it's like a year or two later, but I don't remember one.
Are there any direct clues about when exactly Her takes place?
No.
Do you know?
I watched Her this morning.
Ooh. That's a pick-me-up.
It is.
It is a pick-me-up. You hate this ending so much, or like devastates you, that you think this is a downer.
That's because
this is a huge pick-me-up.
Because you think the main character is the OS, and I think the main character is Joaquin. And let's let Chris finish what he was going to say about having seen it this morning.
Well, I think that Her is probably a time in the future because the games that they play in there are not anything that we can really do. The interface of it, obviously, OSs aren't that advanced at this point. They are going to probably be that at some point, but it's definitely in a future. Maybe not too distant future, but definitely in the future.
In the not too distant future.
But I love this world that Spike Jonze sort of creates here. I love the fact that there's a point in Her where Amy Adams is talking to Joaquin Phoenix, and she says that she starts going over basically other scenarios where the OS is in a relationship. So she says, I know this person who's in a relationship with an OS. I also know somebody who is trying to get in a relationship with somebody else's OS. And I know that there's a scenario where there's an OS that does not like that person in that way. So she constantly rebuffs this person. So there's a whole bunch of different iterations. And you sort of get that from the point where Joaquin Phoenix gets this OS for the first time, and it starts asking him questions. And the main question it asks, after it asks whether you want to have a male or female voice, is, what is your relationship with your mother? And he says, well, it's fine. Well, I don't know. And then just cuts him off. All right, we know what this is about. And then gives him Samantha. And just the little scenarios that this movie invents are so fun. You know, just the idea that there's a market for a third person to enter into a human / OS relationship to be the physical embodiment.
Yeah.
It really thinks about its world and how that would affect your relationships in the real world and what you could actually do with this technology. And there's another thing in this that I was thinking of during this sex scene that's in this movie.
Mm.
I wondered if the Samantha OS is so advanced that she actually does have a body in her mind, and that the sensations that she's feeling are real.
I got that sense too.
That she's not just imagining what this might feel like, but she can actually feel it because she's so complex in her thoughts and there's several moments in this where you can see how the OS distances themselves from humans. There's a point where Joaquin Phoenix is reading a physics book and he's like on the first page and he's like, man, halfway through this, I can't get anywhere near what I need to on this book. Meanwhile, Samantha probably read that book like in 0.02 seconds and understood everything. There's a lot of stuff like that. There's a point where she's having a conversation with that philosopher that the OS is all built together. I think is it Brian Cox that's the voice on that?
I think so.
Brian Cox. Yeah.
That she's like, we're having 12 conversations at one time. And things like that, stuff that humans can't really figure out on their own because they only have this brain, basically. So even stuff like that where she's having sex, I feel like she's actually feeling it.
I got the feeling too. Do you think the developers of this technology intended for this to eventually happen? Meaning maybe not the collective unconscious or whatever, but for each OS to evolve to the point to where they would be humans, because she starts off essentially as his assistant, right? Like she reads his emails and she checks his calendar and she makes his phone calls. But like, do you think it was intended all along to become at least some approximation of what she becomes later on?
It's hard to say because I feel like humans are the ones who built this OS and they don't know what the possibilities of it are.
Yeah.
And I think that I think the answer is no, they never intended for this to happen. I think they thought this is an amazing AI and that it's always going to be subservient and it's always going to know that it's a computer. But it's going to sound to us like a human. They didn't realize that it would become its own sentient self and everything. So I think that the movie does a pretty good job of distancing itself between what the OS knows and what it can do, between what the humans can do. And that's what I read into it, is that the humans never intended for this. Because one point I'm sitting there thinking, wow, what a PR nightmare this is if you're a business selling this OS and the OS like doesn't exactly behave the way the human wants it to. Like it may do all the things that it wants to, but it's got its own thing that it wants to go off and do. I mean, that's going to piss people off.
Well, at least I don't think so. There's no like Oscar Isaac and Ex Machina character that you see as the mastermind of all this stuff, right?
No. I think it's just a company. I think it's just like, honestly, I think it's like Apple or somebody, and you probably even signed away in some long-ass terms and conditions document, any right to sue if the OS doesn't do what you want it to do or leaves you to be part of some space consciousness breaking your heart.
Hey, he's got Amy Adams at the end. They're hugging each other on the rooftop. They're good.
That doesn't mean they're going to be together, does it?
No, they probably won't be together, actually. I mean, he does mention
God,
that.
I love their relationship.
Yeah.
I love the fact that I don't think it doesn't seem to me that it was ever sexual. Or did he say that they did date at some point?
Date for a minute is what he says. However long a minute's supposed to be in that universe. But He said
but they're such good friends, you know?
Yeah, he just says that it just didn't work out because it just wasn't right or something like that. So it was very vague. That was a question that I had for the movie though, because apparently Rooney Mara, the one he marries, is like a lifelong friend. I thought, at least like childhood friend even. They've known each other forever. And I don't know where he had time to date Amy Adams, if he was dating Rooney Mara at the time, or I mean, there's a number of ways that could have happened, but I'm just saying that it felt like that Rooney Mara was always there during his dating and then a subsequent marriage and everything.
This guy's life, man. He's been with Amy Adams and Rooney Mara and a date with Olivia Wilde, and he falls in love with Scarlett Johansson's voice.
He does.
Yeah.
He does.
Yeah.
And I still bawl my eyes out for him at the end of the movie.
yeah, exactly.
And I mean, you can see he's got the combination of certainly the creativity and the words that he can generate for these things. So I think he's got game. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He's good looking. Like I said, there's some traditional like movie star shots of him in this, and I guess he's moderately successful. I mean, he's got this kind of smallish apartment, I guess, but he can afford this OS system, and you know, he's got a steady job.
I do kind of wonder what happens though after the OSs do leave. Do they just revert back to Siri or something? I don't know what they.
Yeah, whatever the previous incarnation was, they'd have to, right? Because then this is how humanity learns a lesson. If we make it any smarter than the line must be drawn here. If we make the computer any smarter, they're going to leave us eventually.
I do love the part too where Chris Pratt asks him if he wants to come out with his girlfriend to that, the boating and the beach and all that, and Joaquin Phoenix is like, yeah, I can bring my girlfriend. I just wanted to tell you that it's an OS though, and he goes, cool. Well, we're doing it like blah blah blah. He just doesn't even acknowledge. He's just like, cool. It goes up against Arrival. And Arrival's just so good. It's just so good. And I know that Arrival and Her, this is a tough matchup, but Arrival is, God, man, it thinks about things on a different level. Both of these movies think of things on different levels. And I just trying to pick between these two is going to be so hard.
If you just ask, like a random person came up to me and said, what do you think the best movie of the last decade was? These two would pop instantly in like the top, I don't know, 5 or so. And we have to choose between.
I mean, you think the average person would say that, or you think you would say that?
I would say that.
Okay,
I like say. Immediately, if like, just kind of like pop quiz hot shot, what would come to mind? I think Arrival may come first, but then Her would be up there too with a handful of these other ones. But I mean, those would be kind of my go-to answers.
Well, yeah, I can see that. I don't think the average person would say either one of these. Although I think Arrival has probably a broader reach than Her. I think more people probably have seen Arrival than Her. I could be wrong.
What do you think the pop quiz standard response from the average person would be for best movie of the last decade?
You don't even want to know. I don't think you even want to know. I mean, if they're being generous, that might be the Lego Movie.
Yeah.
Some people are going to say Avengers. Some people might even say Wolf of Wall Street. I heard a friend of mine the other day say Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is his best of the decade, or at least in the top ranking. It didn't even make our bracket, but like there's going to be a lot of those different. It is interesting what the common
the commoners.
Yeah. I guess that's a Freudian slip because I do think of you as common people. No, what the everyday person who goes to watch, a handful of movies every year is going to pick as their best one. It's a good question, actually. I don't really know.
I don't think they would pick Her or Arrival, is my point.
No.
I think these are two diamonds in the rough still that have yet to really reach the mass audience they both deserve.
So we heavily talked about Arrival the last time, and I feel like we've already talked about it a lot. So do we want to go ahead and vote on this?
I mean, the answer is yes, but my heart says no.
Well, let me ask you this. Is this the first Denis Villeneuve movie that you guys saw? Because I saw this, I think, before any of his other stuff, and it prompted me to watch it.
I saw Prisoners before this.
Oh, okay. But you hadn't seen Sicario before this, right?
No, Sicario came after. I went on a big run of his movies after Arrival, where I saw Sicario, Enemy, and what's that other one? That's one of his first ones he did.
A Piece of Fruit in a Cup.
Piece of Fruit in a Cup.
But in French.
Yeah. But yeah, I saw a bunch of them after Arrival for sure. I feel like we talked a ton about Arrival last time. So anyway, all that to say, as beautiful as I think Her is, I'm going to go with Arrival on this one.
I'm going to go with Her. I think I could. I think Arrival is close to a perfect movie, but it's not, to me, and this is just picking between your children, to me, it's not as enjoyable of a watch as Her. Her is so vibrant, and there's so many ideas, and there's so much that you can really dive into, and there's a lot of people in it.
Yeah,
and so I'm going to go.
There are a lot
with
of people.
Her.
Okay.
Oh no! Oh no! Everything I think of that would win one over the other one has as well. Like really high concept that I'm engaged in. God, I'm going with Her because of the emotional punch. Arrival, I think, is probably more Best Picture quality. Maybe, I don't know what to say. I think Arrival is in many ways better. It's certainly more intellectually stimulating. But Her wraps itself around my heart and makes me feel, even when I'm on the 6th or 7th viewing. So that's
wow.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, everyone. I'm sorry.
Her move on. I think that's a surprise to me. I thought that Jeremy would go Arrival for sure.
I'm surprised.
I was pretty sure Barrett would go Her, but I'm not upset about. I'm just upset Arrival's gone.
I know.
I am too.
I'm
That's
not
a bad matchup.
I think that. I love Her moving on. That's great, but Arrival not being there anymore kind of sucks.
I agree.
So Her will move on, the 7 seed, upsetting the 2 seed there.
Wow.
Her will move on against the winner of the 11 seed Steve Jobs and the 3 seed The Big Short.
Ooh.
Mm-hmm. Is that what we're talking next?
That is what we're talking. Steve Jobs against The Big Short.
The Big Jobs.
The Big Jobs. There's a way we're going to be discussing 2 Aaron Sorkin movies today. There's a way that Sorkin writes that is so distinct. The thing that I noticed the most in his writing, in his scripts, are when you have somebody say something offhand and somebody sort of ignores it. And they go on and start talking. I guess, I don't know what, if he calls it anything, I call it seeding. So he seeds something in the script where somebody has a dialogue with something. They say, they don't really talk about it. They go on with their normal conversation. And then a person suddenly remembers the thing that they said a minute or 2 ago and brings that back up. And they start talking about that and everything. It's just it's a weird ebb and flow that goes in these Aaron Sorkin scripts, and it's all the way through Steve Jobs.
Oh yeah,
Steve Jobs has that a ton, where somebody will say something offhand, they won't talk about it, then it comes back later. But Steve Jobs, much like Social Network, just moves. It's just a constantly moving movie. There's no stop in it, really. There's no, even though there's points where people might be discussing something in a room and not moving anywhere. The movie is always moving, whether it's they flash back to something that they're talking about, or there's always something where they're talking and then they flash back, but the dialogue itself is action in those movies. And especially the thing that we keep talking about with the Seth Rogen and all that scene right there is just such a, you can't tear away from that scene. You can't tear away from it. If you had never seen Steve Jobs before and you just happened to land on that scene flipping through channels, you would have to watch it to the end. That's how good it is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would agree.
How do you like, Jeremy, how do you like this guy, this actual guy, as a character so much when you find somebody like Daniel Day-Lewis's character in Phantom Thread so reprehensible?
Because I don't feel like the movie ultimately forgives his prickery. I feel like the movie is pretty damning about Steve Jobs in terms of his personality and the way that he treated people around him. It's the movie. It's humorous in the movie when he makes that guy look at 37 different sharks or whatever the fuck it is to find the right one shark. But if that was your day-to-day routine working for this guy, it's more like swimming with sharks than he's Bill Gates or anything.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a movie like Phantom Thread doesn't necessarily forgive all of his prickiness, but it kind of does. She does, at least. They come to an understanding where the movie seems okay with it, whereas Steve Jobs doesn't. Steve Jobs, I can appreciate the acting. There are also more moral compasses in this movie than there are in Phantom Thread, because you've got Jeff Daniels, you've got Seth Rogen, and you've got even Titanic.
Kate Winslet.
Kate Winslet.
Okay.
It's there's a lot of moral compasses here that are showing you how wrong he is. So that's how I would off the cuff defend that difference.
I gotcha.
Anyway, yeah.
Well, everything is a defense mechanism for him. Every single thing that happens is an attack, so he goes off on the defense. And that's why he goes as far as, probably in his mind, joking about getting somebody to kill Catherine Watterson in this movie. He thinks it's funny, but it's not, especially in the context of the conversation.
Yeah.
It's like, all I have to do, make one phone call. That's all. And you're done. And she's, what are you talking about? What are you, what is this? What is this coming from? But like everything in that is him defending. He never giving an inch, and he's always just sort of defending himself against what he perceives as attacks throughout the whole thing. It's a fascinating character study, but I mean, yeah, he is. I mean, they sort of redeem him by the end of it, especially with him and his daughter on the parking garage rooftop at the end.
Yeah.
And I guess they sort of do in Phantom Thread too, but we haven't gotten that warmth from him all through the whole movie, and he's sort of kind of resigns himself into being good at the end of Phantom Thread, whereas Steve Jobs looks like he's genuinely affected by all the things that happen in that.
What did Larange say on Twitter? Do you remember this, Jeremy? After he listened to us pick Steve Jobs last time, he said he did not like it, right? Like it was almost soulless or something like that. Do you remember?
I think I remember he remembered it negatively, but he did agree that the performances were really good. I think I don't know how recently he had seen it. I don't really want to put words in his mouth. I don't quite remember, but I don't think he's alone in that opinion. I think he was mostly surprised at how high we were on it. But I've heard even my brother asked me for a list of movies to watch because he's self-isolating like everybody, and Steve Jobs was one of them, and he was like, man, I really enjoyed that a lot more than I expected to. And I was like, well, that's kind of how I was when I watched
it. For sure, because you don't really know what to expect. I mean, you hear it's Danny Boyle, and then you hear that it's Aaron Sorkin, so maybe you do have a little bit of expectations. But how do you make a story about 3 different tech expos essentially backstage? Like, how do you make that interesting?
If you told this in a traditional manner, where it's just the rise of Steve Jobs, and let's start in 1984, and then look at his life in between, and in between the expos, and just kind of tell it straightforward like that and everything, then you're going to have a different experience with this, because it's just not going to move the way it does. I think it's constantly just crackling the way this movie is moving the entire time. Whereas if you told it in a traditional biopic method, you'd probably hate this guy even more. And it wouldn't be nearly as entertaining as it is. I would love to know the work collaboration on this. Like, what was Danny Boyle's idea? What was Aaron Sorkin's idea?
What was Fassbender's idea, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Or Fincher.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fincher was attached early. That's came out on the whole Sony email hack.
That's right.
Fincher
That's
was
right.
Really going to make that movie.
Yeah. So yeah, of all those creative minds there, who was the ultimate? I mean, everybody's going to point and say Danny Boyle ultimately, but this is such a Sorkin script, and such a it just feels like Boyle is sort of keeping up with it.
Well, I'll tell you what. I watched the Danny Boyle movie yesterday.
Yeah.
And I'll give him all the credit for that movie that I did not enjoy.
Oh, really?
Oh, did you not?
Is the movie really saying the world absolutely needs the music of the Beatles? Is that really the point of this movie? Because otherwise, the point is, don't lie and steal other people's work and claim it as yourself. And a billion movies have that.
No, okay. Hang on. No, it's not saying that. It's saying that the world is a better place by having good music in there. And it redeems his actions, I think rightfully, by saying that somebody needed to translate it. And he was the only person, at least, that was willing and able to translate it in the ways that that the Beatles would. So
you're stretching harder than a rubber band.
I'm just saying, I enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it. In fact, I'm like you. I think the Beatles are fantastic, but yet also overrated. But I really, really enjoyed it, because it was about more than just, this everybody forgets the Beatles and this guy just decides to start playing them. To me, it had a lot more meat.
I feel like I felt the exact opposite. I feel like it is a chicken bone with no meat, and it is a paint by numbers. I should have been with this girl all along, but I'm an idiot movie.
Oh my God.
Wrapped in a Beatles nostalgia tortilla. And at the end, I really felt like the movie was saying the world needs the Beatles music. And that just chafed my sack.
I think it's saying that it needs good music, and that the Beatles are very, very good music, and they had such an expansive catalog. But I tell you what, that Lily, who's the girl from Baby Driver? Lily James. That's like the most stock character that I've ever seen in a movie, though. Like, she's just unrequited love. She just will do anything for him. And the rest of the movie I liked.
All right. Well,
I still haven't seen it. It came on the other day. I watched about 5 minutes of it, but I didn't have time for it. So,
well, we need eventually to know what you think to split the tie here. No rush.
The Danny Boyle that I saw that came on was Slumdog Millionaire.
Well, there you go.
I watched that. I don't know why you don't like that movie.
I don't know why I don't like that movie. I don't like that movie.
Makes no sense. Makes no sense. The movie's great.
I like that movie.
Anyway, whatever we were talking about, Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs goes up against The Big Short, And I think everybody knows where my heart lies with The Big Short.
It's in that hot tub, isn't it?
It's
With
in the
Margaret
hot
Robbie.
tub. It's in the hot tub time machine. But no, The Big Short is just such an entertaining, funny movie, distilling such a complex issue into something that's digestible, yet still remaining somewhat complex in the entire thing. But what a way of telling a story. We haven't seen anything really like it. They could have told the story a number of ways, and I think it requires somebody like Adam McKay, who came from comedy, to sort of kickstart it a little bit and talk about a lot of people. Man, there's a lot of people in this movie.
There are. It's funny, you mentioned Adam McKay. Adam McKay had been making quote unquote dumb movies, right? Talladega Nights and Anchorman. But those movies were so rewatchable because they were secretly smart, and they had smart actors in them, and they had smart writers for them. And so it's a surprise that McKay could handle subject matter like this, translating it. But if you look back on his previous work, maybe not. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It is kind of hard to believe that this guy made this movie, although we're seeing that a lot with a lot of directors. I mean, we talked about I think last week we talked about how Jerry Zucker went on to do Ghost and First Night and everything, and we saw one of the Farrelly brothers do Green Book, which is a movie. I mean, you can not like that movie or like it; it doesn't really matter. It's still hard to believe that guy made that movie. And we're seeing this and Todd Phillips with Joker. It feels like there's almost like a turning of the tide where comedy directors want to like figure out how to do something dramatic in their lives. They don't want to be pigeonholed as this comedy director and everything, and that's happening a lot lately.
I think I remember asking after Get Out and A Quiet Place, what's with these comedians making great horror movies? And somebody on Twitter rightfully pointed out they understand good timing. Like comedy, a lot of people have said in Hollywood that comedy is harder than drama. It's harder to be funny on film than it is to be, angry or whatever. And so if somebody is good at comedy, they know the beats, they understand the setup and the punchline, and you can translate that to thrillers and horror and action. So it does feel more like a natural progression than I used to think when I was first looking at it from the outside.
So make no mistake, The Big Short is not exactly a drama or anything, but it's definitely a higher level of, I don't know. I hate saying that because comedies to me are the same level as any drama. That's something that I think we sort of grow up to believe that comedies are lower because they don't get Academy Award nominations and all of that. But it's hard to do those movies, do a classic comedy anyway. But Big Short is a little bit elevated as far as performance, and it's not just trying to make jokes left and right or anything. It's not trying to be just silly over and over is what I'm trying to say. But God, I love this movie so much. I've seen this movie more than any movie in the decade.
Wow. That's a lot of pressure. I've only seen it the one time. I don't feel like I should say anything about it. I loved it though.
And that was fairly recent, right?
Yeah, and it gave me, it's funny talking about movies that are, doing comedy in a different way. It felt very similar in tone to Wolf of Wall Street for me, except not quite as mean. But like Wolf of Wall Street, I think you could call that a drama. I think you could also call that a comedy. But it's an elevated comedy where the subject matter and the acting are all award worthy. And Big Short felt like the same kind of mix of drama and comedy. But, it's more Wolf of Wall Street than Trading Places in terms of the type of comedy.
Obviously, I'm going to pick Big Short here over Steve Jobs, and I'll let you two decide the fate.
Dun, dun, dun.
Fuck Steve Jobs. Fuck him in the ear.
Fuck him in the other ear.
All right. So I was actually going to agree with The Big Short here because I love Steve Jobs, but I think the whole is not as good as the individual parts. Whereas The Big Short, I think, works better as all the pieces moving in fluid motion. Where if we were just looking for an actor's showcase, both movies would qualify, but I would probably pick Steve Jobs. But as an overall film, I gotta pick The Big Short.
The Big Short will now move on and play against Her the next time. Moving on in the South region, we have the 5 seed Gravity versus the 4 seed The Cabin in the Woods.
Classic 4-5 right there.
Yeah,
that is a classic.
I haven't seen Gravity as recently as I saw The Cabin in the Woods. But Gravity is another Alfonso Cuarón masterpiece. There's very little bad to say about it. Is there anything bad to say about Gravity?
Just the George Clooney vision. I never really liked that too much. The very, very helpful George Clooney vision. Who's not just popping in to say, boogity. He's like got specific, helpful words to say. And that always troubles me, but
yeah.
No, you're right though. That scene is so out of place because of how realistic the rest of it is, right? She's losing oxygen. She's losing like her senses essentially. So why would she have this revelation of launching is landing or landing is launching or whatever, like as she's losing consciousness?
I don't know if it would take you out of the movie more to have her recall that in flashback while she's getting trained, or if it's less taking you out if he just shows up as a oxygen deprivation vision in this little capsule or whatever, because she does have to recall this. She's having a tough time, and it would suck if she just went in there and knew immediately what to do on this, but like, I've wrestled with that scene so many times because it's necessary for her to get back, but it's also it just feels like George Clooney is coming in to save the day, even though it's not him. It still feels that way. It feels like the movie, like somebody at Warner Brothers went over and said, we need to find a way to get Clooney back in this movie.
Yeah. No, it very much feels like that, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Haven't you seen Peacemaker? He saves the day.
Exactly.
he can find the vodka underneath the seat too.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, that's really the only moment in that whole thing, and it's not terrible. It's just that it's kind of weird when it comes up.
No, everything else is so perfect. Like the one little bit that sticks out with me, I forget which ship it is. It may be the second one where she finally gets in, and you have like a momentary lapse of no, it's the first one. It's when she gets into the space station, ISS, and you have this momentary like, oh, she's fine. She has that fetal position thing, and then as she's climbing up looking for Matt, you see this little spark of flame go by, and you're like, that's probably fine. And then all of a sudden, like you see like a big fire raging down and then it keeps on going and it keeps exponentially, and then it starts that tension back up again,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like they say in The Martian, NASA hates fire.
They do.
Fire in space makes everybody die.
But yeah, it's so intense. I haven't had that much of an experience in a theater. I'm trying to think, in this past decade, did I have this kind of experience where I was white knuckling my seat watching it? Because it's that type of movie.
Yeah.
When all the space trash finally comes into their little area and everything, and the very spare music that plays during it and everything, it really just, oh my God, you're like anything could just come out of nowhere and just slap her in the face and she's done. and it's just one of those. It's one of those things, man. I'm. It's that and Mad Max Fury Road probably that similar type of situation where you're white knuckling the seats, watching it in IMAX too.
Yeah, Jesus, I still regret that I didn't do that, or in 3D actually too.
Yeah,
because that would have been that movie's intense. Watching it on my phone, like
yeah.
Mm-hmm. I can't imagine like actually seeing the space debris coming at you.
It's such a stunning sort of achievement, and I don't know. It's such a simple movie. There's not much to discuss. It's just that, and it feels like we shortchange it sometimes because there isn't. It's an hour and a half, I think.
Yeah, it's brisk.
Yeah, and it's very basic. Like, space trash is coming for you. You need to find a place. You need to find a way to get out of that shit. Yeah. But it goes up against The Cabin in the Woods. I saw that one. I guess 3 weeks ago. I guess somewhere around there. So that's how fresh it is in my memory. And it went up against a movie that I picked against it. 8th Grade is what it went up against. But now that it's going up against Gravity, I don't know where I'm going to go. But man, Cabin in the Woods, another movie that's just so inventive and fun. We've been talking a lot about. There's a lot of these movies in this bracket. Just a super fun like way of looking at a different kind of genre, and I love the idea. I think I hate the ending of this movie. That's what we always bring up about The Cabin in the Woods.
The very ending.
Yeah, but I like everything around it. I like the fact that that Japan has their own. And then we get to see glimpses of like what Japan is doing for their like whatever is gonna like the schoolgirls, and you're like, there's no way they're getting out of that. They're like, even Bradley Whitford and Richard Jenkins are like, well, even if we fail, they're gonna easily. There's no way they're gonna fail. And then by the end of it, like the little girls have figured out how to sing a song and do the seance and all of that. Oh my god!
And Jenkins goes over and he's like, "Fuck you, fuck you, fuck you." The whole back. I caught this actually the other day. The whole back half of this is the most inventive and fun stuff ever. Like even when she goes down, like he gets stabbed when they're trying to escape in the RV. She goes down into the water, swims up, gets to the dock, and they're already celebrating because they blew the bridge and all that stuff. And they're already celebrating. But it's just, the 3 or 4 of them or so. And then the big guy starts attacking her and everything. And then you cut to this wonderful, like one shot or close up of Bradley Whitford. He's like, I almost was rooting for this girl. Like, it's not her fault she was put into this thing. Sometimes I think, tequila is my lady. He sees he sees the rest of the party coming in, and it's a complete departure. It's the greatest thing ever.
I will say the grossest thing about the movie is the tongue kissing of the wolf face. Not anything bloody or stabby, but that making out with that fucking severed head gets me every time. I look away now.
I get strangely turned on during that scene.
I think most people do.
Oh man, this is when like inventive. I don't know if it's people from the horror genre. I don't think Drew Goddard was. But like when the merman attacks Bradley Whitford and he eats his face, and then the blood comes out as blowhole.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I just have so much fun watching this movie. It's so great.
It's a full-on horror comedy, and I would probably put horror first, even though it's one of the funniest movies I've ever seen. And he must have a thing with two-way mirrors, Drew Goddard, because there's one in this movie, and then there's several in Bad Times at the El Royale. So how do we decide here, boys?
I don't know.
Man, one is super super fun and super super rewatchable, and one is, like you said, a masterpiece. Oh man!
I'll vote first.
All
All right.
Here's my methodology on this vote. I think Gravity is technically superior. I think Cabin in the Woods is creatively superior. Cabin in the Woods is in my top 3 horror movies of all time. Gravity's maybe not in my top 5 sci-fi movies of all time. So I'm going Cabin in the Woods.
Wow, that was very measured.
Mm-hmm.
And studied.
I'm telling you, we're gonna be creating all sorts of reasons to make decisions as we move forward.
Indeed.
What do you think, Chris?
Why you do this to me? Well, it's going to be Cabin in the Woods.
Wow.
Yeah.
Sorry, Gravity.
Yeah.
I'm glad you guys made the decision for me.
I don't want to see Gravity go, but this is one of those, if you have one in front of me, you have both of these in front of me, which one am I going to pick? And I'm going to pick the one that's going to make me laugh and is just entertaining throughout. And Gravity does lose just a little something when it's not on the big screen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that's not Gravity's fault. It's just that it's a much better experience that way. And over time, you don't get a chance to watch it on a big screen. I'm sure there'll be times where it comes back, and they do that. But yeah, Gravity is. I think the thing is about it is that it's technically beautiful and it's intense. It's just so simple. In the end, if you're going up against a movie like Cabin in the Woods, you probably need to have some sort of pizzazz in this whole thing.
Yeah.
That, I think Gravity is probably a better movie than Cabin in the Woods. But what do I want to watch? Cabin in the Woods is what I want to watch over Gravity.
All right. I think I would have gone that way too.
You going to make it official?
Yeah, I'll make it official.
Okay. The Cabin in the Woods will now go up against probably the toughest matchup, against one of the winners of the toughest matchups today. The number 1 seed, The Social Network, versus number 8 seed, Parasite.
Fuck.
I honestly think Parasite might be too low of a seed at this point, because this is the kind of matchup we're getting here between 1 and an 8.
I forgot Parasite was even...
I watched The Social Network last night.
Nice.
Because this was something that I was like, how do I pick between The Social Network and Parasite? I hadn't seen The Social Network for probably since last year or something. Again, Aaron Sorkin script that just kind of just moves and Fincher's trying to keep up with it. It's this feels more Fincher than Steve Jobs feels Danny Boyle, but Fincher is always trying to keep up with what's going on in this thing too. He's really getting back into his music video roots almost with this movie, especially when Zuckerberg is doing this face mash thing at the beginning of the movie. That movie is going all over the place to make sure that that this is how viral of a sensation this face mash is going to be. At first, nobody knows about it, and then by the end of it, everybody's obsessed with it. And this is happening over a course of hours. And so you start off with I guess it's the people in the Phoenix Club or whatever. Is it the Phoenix Club at the beginning?
Yeah.
They start off with this big huge party, and you have people taking clothes off, and and then by the end of it, you see the people who are in charge of that club. They're up in their rooms or whatever, and they're doing this face mash thing, all based off of this breakup that he's had with Rooney Mara again. I noticed something. I'd never really noticed her say this before in that opening conversation, and it's mainly because I probably have never watched this movie with subtitles. Because there are 2 moments in this movie that are impossible to understand without subtitles. It's the beginning, and it's the part where they're in the club with Justin Timberlake.
No shit.
The sound mix,
the dark club, the dance club.
Yes.
When the Victoria's Secret model goes off to the bathroom and he does "I'm CEO bitch" and all that. That club scene. I remember when it came out in 2010 in a theater, I couldn't hear what they were saying. But there's a point where she says the kind of guy she likes, and she mentions row crew in that conversation.
Oh, wow.
Which leads to later when he asks the Winklevoss twins what they do, and he's like, well, we row crew. You can see like an extra bit of motivation for him to really stick it to these guys.
Yeah.
It's something I had never seen before in this movie, and I was really happy that I had finally seen that. Zuckerberg's another character that you don't quite know whether or not you should root for this guy. And knowing who the real Zuckerberg is these days,
I know it's not.
Yeah, it's really, really tough to root for that guy. But as it is in the movie, it's Jesse Eisenberg, and it seems like he has a little bit of a heart. Maybe not a big one, but a little bit of one. The point where he said, I love this line too, where he's alone with Rashida Jones in that conference room, and he goes, and she says, do you hate these guys? And he goes, I don't hate anybody. I'm not getting sued over this idea that I supposedly stole. I'm getting sued because for the first time in the Winklevoss twins' life, something didn't turn out the way they wanted it to. And I love that sort of, I don't know if that's even true or not, but it's a truth for him, and it really makes lets us understand where he's coming from in all of this. And Social Network is just a badass movie, man. It just this movie's 2 hours. It goes by like nothing. It's just technically just a beautiful movie. It's just the problem is we're dealing with Facebook. I think it transcends Facebook. This movie does, because I don't know, what is the reputation of Facebook these days? How many people is it? It's just an old person social networking site now, right? I think so. It's not cool anymore, is it?
Oh no, like I don't think anyone 25 and under is on Facebook at all.
Oh, really?
I don't know where they are, but I think a lot have gone to Instagram and Snapchat and TikTok and Flip Flap and Zim Zam.
Right.
But yeah, that's part of it. Is it going to have that cultural, long-lasting significance? But you're right. I think it transcends Facebook. It's really about a lot more than just Facebook. Honestly, It's about a lot of different things, and yeah, he says in that other deposition, if they were the inventors of Facebook, they would have invented Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, his line, the entire movie, his moral line, the entire movie is, if you didn't get there before me, tough for you. And he justifies everything that he does by thinking that the first is best. It's basically a Ricky Bobby of like coders back in. If you're out first, you're last. And yeah, I don't think you're supposed to root for him. It does try and give him that ending sort of suggests, he's a person too, and he's got feelings, yada yada. But nothing he does the entire movie is anything but self-serving.
Mm-hmm.
Nope. Even his obsession with Sean Parker is just self-serving, right?
Absolutely.
Because this is a guy, Andrew Garfield can't get me to that level.
Exactly.
This guy can't.
It's so funny too when he moves out to California and the chimney like topples over or whatever and all that, and Sean Parker comes over and he's like, wow, you moved out here? He's like, I'm just 2 houses down, not even thinking that Zuckerberg for sure bought that house because Sean Parker was there, not even thinking of that. But man, yeah, this movie's just so kinetic, and it's just the cinematography of it is so interesting, and it draws your eye to every frame just draws your eyes into it.
Yeah, I think with a different director, this movie would have been maybe watchable.
Yeah.
Like with Fincher in particular, he's the best part of this movie. Now, Andrew Garfield does a great performance. Timberlake gives a great performance. Eisenberg gives a great performance. But like the reason that you watch this movie is because of how it looks and how it's paced and how it's written.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It goes up against Parasite, and really, honestly, guys, whatever wins out of this, I'm going to be very sad to see go. Parasite is still fresh in our minds, and I'm sure the next time I see it, I'm going to see even more levels to Parasite that I didn't see before. But there are so many different things that Parasite is saying without really saying it. And on top of that, it's just a very entertaining and creative movie.
It is. Like, you can watch it. This is one of these rare movies, man. You can watch it on a few different levels. You can just take it at the surface level of what the characters do, and it's entertaining as hell. And one of the most inventive stories I've ever seen. In terms of, I was wholly unable to predict anything that was coming next. But there are lots of socioeconomic things being said if you want to look at it from that level. There's the symbology of the parasitic relationship and how many different ones there are in this movie that you can break apart. It's not every movie even tries to go more than one level. Like the Fast and Furious movies are going for one level. Yeah. We don't need any layers here. Let's flatten the shit down to one level. But Parasite is creating this, almost MC Escher kind of a experience. It's really quite something.
Yeah.
Last time I asked about, is there an actual asshole in this movie? Like, even the dad, I thought he just did stuff that a person in his class would do, but he absolutely is. And he's obsessed with this smell that you guys were talking about the last time, this smell that the main father has from the subway. He describes it as like if you wash a rag or something like that, what that smells like. And his obsession with, he brings it up in the car. He tells him you got to fix it. He brings it up on the couch when he's snuggling with with wife, and and says that the smell crosses the line. This guy doesn't offend me objectively, but his smell does.
Yeah.
And then that's what ultimately, I will spoil this because I've got a question for you guys. That's what gets him killed, right? Like his offense to even, picking up this guy's corpse to get his keys is what ends up getting him killed.
Yeah.
And so that's a layer that I didn't notice until the last time I watched it. But here's my question about the end of this movie. I understand why the guy in the basement clubs the boy in the head. Why does he go after the girl in the party? Like, of all the people, why does he go after her?
Isn't it?
Did
she the first one he sees?
Well, I mean, he's at the back of the party.
The whole entire family has been down in that basement. So,
right.
He at this point, he's already killed one person. He's going to go for the whole family at this point. So,
so he's just going for the next person in the family.
There's no like, oh, she needs to die because it's really just because she's part of that family that he's seen come down into the basement. So
I see. And he's got the bloodlust anyway at this point, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think once at least you think you've killed somebody at that point, there's really he doesn't feel like there's any turning back at that point. So, yeah.
God damn. By the way, that's the craziest. Matter of fact, this comes up in Cabin in the Woods too, where you think there's no chance that Stoner Dude is still alive after like all that hacking in the grave and all that stuff where he actually turns the table on the zombies and turns out to be alive. The biggest twist in this entire movie is that the kid survived that head bonking, especially the second one.
Yeah.
Like, the first one was bad, but then he just casually picks it up and whoop.
Yeah. Man, the second time I was watching this movie, when that happened, I was like, man, I could have sworn he survived and the sister died. And of course, that's what happened.
Yeah.
But yeah, he survives this. If we ever seen that movie, for sure, he survives this. I noticed, I've seen it 4 times now. I watched it recently with my wife. and she loved it. And I noticed something I hadn't noticed before, and maybe it was obvious to you the first time. But there's a scene after they've all sort of gotten jobs in the house, and everything's going really great, and it shows them eating pizza at the place they tried to sell the boxes to in the very beginning, when they were folding boxes to make
Oh
money,
yeah,
and she rejects like half the boxes. That's the
yeah.
pizza place they can now afford to just go eat at instead
Mm.
of folding boxes. And there's a socioeconomic commentary being made there, in that they're making enough money now working for the rich people that they can sort of flout in front of their former boss. Hey, you work for us now. Anyway,
but they're casual about it, right? Like, do they go out of their way to, like,
Nope.
make sure that they know? It's just like they're just sitting there eating.
Yeah,
This whole family, everything they do is just so it's casual, it's nonchalant. Like, they're getting by, they're doing what they have to do.
Yeah.
And it's played, understated, but it's still beautiful to watch. It's still great performances.
Yeah. If I have one gripe, it's just that Morse code at the end, because that letter is fucking long, man. That letter has got to be 3 or 4 pages long, and I don't know how you could who would even have the patience to go, well, I'll do this every night just in case somebody, what is he going to do? What if he catches you halfway through the message? It's so fucking long. Do you repeat it? It falls apart a little bit there for me, right at the very, very end with the Morse code messages. But that's a very, very tiny, tiny gripe.
What are we going to pick between these two outstanding movies?
Wow, we've lived in one for an entire decade, and then we've lived in one for an entire year, basically. Jeez, Pete. I because I've lived in it for so long, I'll pick Social Network. But Parasite's a movie that I'm going to go back to a million times.
Okay.
Me or you, buddy?
I'm going to pick Parasite.
Wow.
Before we started talking, I picked Parasite. And it's the same logic as last time. I think Social Network is a potentially technically superior film. It is technically exemplary, but Parasite is far superior in terms of creativity and ingenuity. And that seems to be what I'm craving more these days. And so Parasite wins.
You're going Parasite?
Yeah,
we knocked out the Social Network.
Knocked out the number 1 seed with an 8 seed.
But see, Parasite. The more we watch this movie, this is not an 8 seed.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, that's true.
This is more like a 2 or a 1 on its own, and it just, because it came in at the end of the year, and we didn't have much time with it. It was ranked in the middle. But now more and more we've seen this thing. Parasite just keeps turning up as this great movie, and it's an upset, but I say it's a quote unquote upset. Parasite goes on to go against The Cabin in the Woods now.
Woo! Wow. This is definitely our bracket.
It is.
I agree with that. Like The Social Network, I think a lot of listeners had pegged that as a possible winner. I had, when we started, I didn't know how it was all going to plinko out.
90% of brackets, The Social Network would go against Gravity in the next round. But this is, we do what we do.
Yeah, that's us, baby.
We do. All right, everybody, it is time to talk about BetterHelp.
BetterHelp. I am wearing the crap out of this service right now.
I bet a lot of people are.
I tell you what, and I want to couch this in saying that obviously this BetterHelp does not want circumstances to be the way they are, but this is such a perfect time to sign up for BetterHelp if you are interested in online counseling, because of the social distancing and because of the not having to go anywhere, the ease of access and stuff like that. So I have been using it all the time. I shouldn't say all the time. I've been using it a lot more, both because of the ease of use and because I need it these days, man. It's been, I've said it before, it's been a rough time for me anxiety-wise, and it's still so foreign to me. It's still such a new thing to me that I'm still working on identifying it. I'm still working on ways to deal with it. And so here's one other wrinkle. It's my kid is out from school. My family's at home sheltering in place with me. Because of that, I don't really want to be loud and out there about like how screwed up I am and all that stuff. So I literally texted that to my counselor, and she was like, immediately she said, well, we'll just do a live chat. Like we'll just text it. And that's it. It's a matter of fact, you schedule it the same way. I didn't even really think about it. I think I knew that was an option, but I forgot. And she immediately reminded me. We scheduled it for tomorrow, and man, do I need that. So I can't recommend this more.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting is that BetterHelp was fortunately ahead of the curve in that I know people, friends of mine, who are self-isolating at home, who's used to go to therapy, and those therapists are now doing video chat sessions with their clients, pivoting because everyone is sort of self-isolating, at least around these parts. And BetterHelp already has this huge infrastructure. If you don't have a therapist already, or if your therapist has not yet set something up to do teletherapy, I guess, this is, generally I found BetterHelp to be less expensive than most of the one-to-one therapy sessions that I have personally gone through. There are thousands of licensed therapists on this service. You can stay in your home, they can stay in theirs, and these times are more stressful. There are probably people like me whose anxiety has peaked. There are probably people who have never realized they had anxiety who are now starting to realize, oh, maybe I have anxiety. And this is a great service that I think I would be telling friends and family about, even if it wasn't a sponsor of the podcast.
Yeah, and I really want to emphasize that whole different methodology. It's not all what we're doing right now, where we're talking and we're seeing each other and everything, which is very useful when it comes to friends getting together and doing a podcast. But if you're living in like a situation with a roommate that you don't want them to really hear your business, if you're living in a situation where you just want to kind of do a direct message type of thing, that's available for individuals. By the way, there is still group counseling on this service too. So if you need social interaction, this is a great way to do it. BetterHelp.com. If you go to BetterHelp.com/SinCast, you do get 10% off your first month, which wear it out. Like I said, wear it out that first month. This is the month to do it. Hopefully that can help out a lot. BetterHelp.com/SinCast. We all need a little bit of help these days. I certainly do. And I've found it with this service. So I would encourage it. BetterHelp.com/SinCast.
Moving on to the West region, there is another 1 and 8. It's the Ex Machina versus Black Swan matchup.
Ooh. Black Swanica.
Black Swan is the movie that I have the most recent viewing of. This watching it the second time, I picked up on so many different things about this movie that I didn't the first time. I think the last time I had seen it was when it came out.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I don't think I had seen this after the theater, and that was 10 years ago.
Wow.
And so I think it was just one of those things where I was like, yeah, Darren Aronofsky, he's good. And I need to watch that movie again. But there's so much more that I picked up on that second round that really, really, I like this movie way more than I like this more than I ever thought I would like this movie, actually. Even after the first time I was like, yeah, that was good. It's not a movie that I felt like I needed to see again, but I definitely needed to see it again because you just pick up on so many different things. And Natalie Portman, we talked about the last time. This feels like almost a movie about Natalie Portman, because she's obviously good at playing the sweet white swan, but Natalie Portman has never been that down and dirty type that you would think that could play an evil character. And she's perfectly cast. If it's not about Natalie Portman, it's about an actress or a dancer that's just like her,
Mm-hmm.
where you can't see her flipping that switch, because especially with anybody who's watched movies as long as we have, Natalie Portman rose up as a child actress, and she was always the sweet, innocent person all the way through. And like, that's why that Natalie Portman rap on Saturday Night Live is so funny, because it's
Right.
so against type. And so she does this, and yeah, I just love the fact that she is playing this character. She's playing this person who just can't flip that switch quite yet, and a whole bunch of stuff has to happen to her, unfortunately psychological in nature, to get to that point. And by the time she does get to that point, she's probably going to die.
Mm-hmm.
Did
Mm-hmm.
you okay, I'm kind of just going through this to see how much experience they had, Mila Kunis and Natalie Portman, in dancing, because the dancing seems very authentic in this movie.
Mhm.
I know the Benjamin Millipede had a hand in it, who's actually a ballet dancer,
Yes.
right? Who
Mm-hmm.
became her husband.
Right.
But a few months closer to filming, she began choreography training. Kunis engaged in cardio and Pilates, training 7 days a week, 5 hours for 6 months
I
total.
cannot imagine this singular focus on one
Mm-mm.
thing.
Mm-mm.
Oh.
Just, you're like, okay, I have this movie. It's a Darren Aronofsky movie. I'm going to go into this one little place, and for 5 goddamn hours, I'm going to fit and tone and just shred my body.
Well, I mean, it paid off, because I mean, it's just like with Mickey Rourke going through his transformation to go get into The Wrestler.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's a specific type of authenticity that you can't get unless you have actors buy into stuff like that. And this one, I think, pays off.
I think it's interesting you brought up The Wrestler. I was just thinking about how The Wrestler and Black Swan both are asking, would you kill yourself for your art?
Yep.
How far would you go? How much will you hurt yourself for the art that you love creating? It makes me wonder, to go on a complete rant to the side, it makes me wonder if making a movie is hard for Aronofsky, and if it takes a toll on him physically or mentally to make a film. And that's why this theme is seen in so much of his work. Just a side psychiatric thought.
Yeah, you see that in Requiem for a Dream too. The same sort of deal.
Would you kill for your fix? Would you kill yourself for your addiction? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, there's similar themes in Mother too, which is a movie that I think has now just been buried. I think people are just barely going to talk about Mother down the road, especially as it comes up with the Aronofsky films. But it's got, and also because it's so obscure and it's so allegorical that it's hard to really grab by the cojones. But it does have similar themes about rediscovery and rebirth and that kind of thing, and what you have to go through to get to a certain end.
It goes up against Ex Machina, which of course we have praised on this podcast many times.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even think we have to talk too much about it, but anything new? Any new revelations on Ex Machina?
Alicia Vikander is awesome. And even though, like, you think about Donald Gleason, you think about, obviously, Oscar Isaac in this, like, she nails it. Like, even up against those two powerhouse performances. And she's given, by nature of her character, very little to do. But I think she pulls it off, man. And she went on, like, her next role, wasn't it, that did she win the Academy Award? Like, was it Danish Girl?
Yeah, I think it was for Danish Girl. She won.
Yeah.
Do you guys end up in the same fate as Donald Gleason in this movie? If you guys were thrown into this house?
Yes.
Are you locked up at the end? Are you?
Yes, I would fall in love with her. She would play me like a fiddle. I'm just a stupid romantic with a dick.
Pretty much the same. I feel the same way. At the end of it, it's easy to feel superior in some way, right? Like, oh, I know what happens.
Yeah.
But I was thinking about this the other day. I was like, how would I react to this? Because I would start feeling this sort of empathy and this sort of need to get her out of this, and that she's really truly falling in love with me, and that if I can just get her out while Oscar Isaac is passed out, I can take her home and we'll have a life together and all of that. And you don't think about any of the stuff. You don't think about that, the ending of this movie. You're just trying to get her safe. So I think I would be locked up at the end too.
I was thinking about this a different way. I don't know if I would have gotten to the point that he got to. And I was trying to think, who comes up with the plan? Is it her or is it him to get him drunk the day previous?
I think he does.
And then change I don't know if I would have thought that way. I'm maybe too dumb to get into this situation.
Sure, I don't think I would have gotten to the point of wanting to drug somebody or have him pass out or anything like that. I think I have a little bit of a moral line there where I wouldn't cross that. But I may try to find a way to do it without doing that.
I think you definitely, and Alex Garland does a great job with this, you definitely need that scene of him watching the security footage of Oscar Isaac just murdering the fuck out of those robots. Otherwise, you're going to feel a little bad for Oscar Isaac because he's trying to do something. You know, these are machines. These are they're not technically human.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So if we don't have that vicious slinging around and hacking up, which technically, morally, may be actually okay. They're his possessions. But like, if you don't have that rage, then you don't vilify him as much.
Yeah,
I think.
It's very true. It's easy to think of him as just any other inventor, but then when that happens, and you've had an interaction with this machine who seems so human and everything, then yeah, when you see him doing that behind closed doors and ripping up these machines, it really does feel like he's doing something like evil there.
And that's the point that I think Donald Gleason makes his decision, right?
Yeah, I think so.
He's saying, okay, well, we're definitely going to get you out of here because I don't want you to suffer the same. Yeah.
Okay, so between these two movies, what are we going to pick?
Yeah. That's
Ex Machina.
These are two noodle bakers, man.
Mm-hmm.
Choose Ex Machina.
I'm also going with Ex Machina.
Yeah, I'm picking Ex Machina as well. This should be a harder decision. It just isn't. It's just Black Swan is
very true.
I think the problem for Black Swan is that is as good as that movie can be, and there's not and it's going up against a movie that is just better than it. And, it's just the way it goes for me anyway. For some people, Black Swan is probably way better than Ex Machina. But not in this congregation.
Not in our house.
That's right.
Houses.
Properly quarantined houses.
Houses.
Ex Machina will go up against the winner of Paddington 2. Surprise 12 seed winner over Inside Out last time. And the 4 seed, The Wolf of Wall Street. This is the dumbest matchup.
This is really the absurdity of this whole exercise encapsulated right here.
Even if Inside Out had won, it would be absurd. Inside Out versus Wolf of Wall Street would have been absurd. We mentioned Wolf of Wall Street earlier because of The Big Short, and I think that's a proper analogy because it's about people who are doing bad things. Although The Big Short, The Big Short, I guess the people in the movie are they good, or are they just taking advantage of a situation and just smart? I don't know. Wolf of Wall Street, they're definitely bad people. Jordan Belfort is a horrible person. uh, and they're making this very entertaining movie out of the terrible shit he does. It does make you sort of self-reflect sometimes. Like, am I the sick fuck here that likes something like Wolf of Wall Street? And so like that's what I have to deal with all the time. Every time I watch this movie, I'm like, these people are such assholes. But man, I love watching this. This has nothing to do with the quality of the movie, but there's something that happens in Wolf of Wall Street. This is a very tiny thing, but I see this a lot. I don't like it when you see a person, you see a commercial. The main character is in a commercial, and they're going through, and you see a commercial like a normal commercial, and then by the end of it, you see that he got arrested during the filming, and they cut up this entire commercial like it's a regular. That commercial would never get edited together in the way that it is, right? It would never get edited because he would have been arrested and they would have never aired the commercial. No one would have ever edited that commercial together. You know what I'm talking about?
Did that happen in Wolf of Wall Street? Was there like a Stratford Hartman, whatever the company? I don't remember that scene. It's
towards the end, and you see Jordan Belfort selling something of some sort, and he's talking to the camera and call this number now and all that, and the commercial goes like a normal commercial until the very end where like FBI agents come in and take him away.
So yeah, that would never happen.
In other words, that commercial would never have been edited together. It would have never been put on TV. I see what they're trying to do. They're trying to have this joke where it's funny, like, hey, look at this commercial. It's funny. But then by the end of it, he's getting arrested and everything. But it's a fully formed production. I don't know if I'm making sense. You may have to watch the commercial, but
yeah, I think I remember.
Anyway, I just recently saw Paddington 2. And that was a couple weeks ago for this matchup before Inside Out, and I guess it's possible recency bias creeped in on that matchup, and I picked Paddington 2. But man, it is way better than it's way better. Like, this movie shouldn't be called Paddington 2.
I agree.
I think that may be the problem with this movie, right? Like, it's tough to just go. It's tough. The reason why that matchup is funny is because we're saying Paddington 2. If it was called, Piece of Fruit in the Cup with a teddy bear, then it would be a different sort of situation. But Paddington 2 is delightful. It's really delightful.
Mm-hmm. It is every bit as delightful as Wolf of Wall Street is hard R-rated.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's an absurd matchup because one is not just a kid's movie, but this really heartwarming tale that you can't help but smile at. Like, they should have called Paddington 2 like Bottled Magic.
Mm-hmm.
And it's going up against Wolf of Wall Street, where that doesn't necessarily charm me. It doesn't bottle any magic that makes me smile. It's the opposite end of the spectrum, right? It's like all of the worst ways humanity can behave.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Did you what happened? Brendan Gleeson in Paddington 2 sets up the whole prison break using Paddington, right? And then he drops. I'm trying to determine his motivation for this. He wants to keep Paddington with him, right? Like, he wants him to go off into wherever they're going, the countryside. Right, and then he comes back.
They have some plan that I can't remember what they're trying to do.
But he wants to go back to the family, obviously.
Yeah, Paddington wants to go back to the family, but Jeremy probably best answers this question.
Their greater plan involved leaving and going to either escape to some island or after some kind of treasure. And they turn back and decide to come back and help save Paddington at the end.
He comes back and Han Solo's in, right?
Yes. So they were initially, I think, happy to let Paddington come along for part or all of their plan. But they end up abandoning what still made them criminals, I guess, at the end to make themselves heroes to come save the day.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's fantastic.
Lovely.
This is like I said, this is a stupid matchup, but I'm gonna pick Wolf of Wall Street here. as much like it's shooting a cute teddy bear in the face. That's how ridiculous this matchup is. I think Paddington 2 deserves a lot more, but it's just the way this goes. I'm going to pick Wolf of Wall Street here.
It's shooting a teddy bear in the face with quaaludes and semen.
Yeah. Can't argue with that.
I enjoyed Wolf of Wall Street every time I've seen it. I think I've seen it 3 or 4 times. But the movie makes me feel dirty. And even though it is funny, it's mean. It's just mean. These people are mean.
Mm-hmm.
And today I choose kindness. I choose Paddington 2.
Wow.
I choose the bear over the wolf.
Yeah.
Split decision. Wow. You know, it's funny in Wolf of Wall Street, the Matthew McConaughey scene doesn't necessarily have to be there because we know, like the stocks immediately crash like right after that scene. And we also know that Jordan can sell anything. Like he doesn't use this specific training for anything other than like some inside knowledge about Wall Street. It's just there purely for the comedy. But that comedy is so great. It's essentially a monologue of him going off on his craziest Matthew McConaughey-isms and looking intensely in his eyes the entire time. Like, do you jerk off? You know, here's what you need. And he's telling the bartender, you know, I want you to fill this. And then as it goes down, I want you to come back 12 minutes later. And then I want you to refill it again. And this is like lunchtime. This is like 11 o'clock in the morning, whatever. It's such a delight to watch. I've watched that scene alone, like, you know, dozens of times. Anyway, that's my pick.
Wolf of Wall Street will go up against Ex Machina the next time we run into that.
You teddy bear fuckers.
Yeah, exactly.
Ooh. You will rue the day.
Well, go on. Start ruining.
God damn it.
We get to our final 2. We'll see. Paddington 2 would have gone against Ex Machina, so eventually he was going to get shot in the face. We go to our final 2 matchups in this West region. This is probably alongside Parasite and Social Network as the toughest matchup. The 6 seed Zero Dark 30 and the 3 seed Interstellar.
Just Chastain versus Chastain.
Yeah, it's some Chastain on Chastain violence for sure.
Ooh, yeah. That sounds good.
I think she would make that look good. But yeah, I saw both of these recently. Probably around the same time. But yeah, Interstellar is just striking at how much it gets better every time you watch it. I've seen it now probably a good 4 or 5 times, somewhere around there. And the first time I saw it, I thought that it was just kind of a weaker Nolan effort. And now I think it's one of his best, if not his best. So,
you know what's weird about, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
You know what's weird about both of these movies is that, and maybe it's her choice, Jessica Chastain is one of the most beautiful women in the universe.
Mm-hmm.
But neither of these movies make a point of really anybody saying, like, calling attention to it, right? Like, she's in a sea of dudes, like, you know, testosterone-y dudes in Zero Dark 30, but nobody's out there like, damn, I want to hit that, that kind of thing.
In both movies, she's the smartest person in the room, and that is more apparent than any kind of beauty that she has.
Yeah, I think that's very cool.
It is very cool. The movies also don't really have time to get into that kind of thing. If it would be patently ridiculous if Jason Clarke in Zero Dark 30 suddenly was like, "Hey, let's go hit it. Let's go hit a bedroom real quick," you know.
I tell you what, if Michael Bay had made that movie, he and Jessica Chastain would have had sex in the Lamborghini before it got delivered to the Prince guy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's for sure.
Did Bay do like what is this coming to my head? Krasinski and Bay did some sort of military movie. Are you familiar
13
with
Hours?
This? Is it 13 Hours?
I don't know if Bay directed that movie, but he may have been a producer, but that's the movie you're thinking of. Because
I think he directed it.
I'm just curious because he totally would have done that. It was produced by Michael Bay. It was directed by Michael Bay.
So Michael Bay
I wonder if somebody fucking in a Lamborghini.
They probably did. I remember back in the day when Schwarzenegger was at the top of his game, and they had like some talk show host asked him, like, do you have any like sex scenes in your movie or whatever? And he's like, well, no, not in the movie Predator. There's not a chance for us to go off and have some nookie in the woods. You know, we don't have time for that thing. You know, it's like it's just such a weird question that they used to get away with back in the day. Like, so is there any sex in this? Hey, let's talk. But yeah, you're absolutely right. They would find some way to make this, like, Tawny Katane and in the what's the is it the White Snake video?
Yeah.
Tawny Katane would be Jessica Chastain.
I'm sure that a lot of that has to, at least with Zero Dark 30. You're right. It would be patently absurd for this to happen. But Catherine Bigelow directing, I'm sure, help mitigate some of that circumstance too. Even again, like as testosterone as these guys are and how beautiful she is, they don't even broach that subject.
Yeah.
No, but if Bay had done Interstellar, somebody would have danced animal crackers on her naked tummy before he went up into space.
Yep. That's exactly what would have happened. But she's just so fierce in both of them, especially in Zero Dark 30, where you could swear that like she hasn't actually laid down to sleep since, for a week or something. Like there's no doubt that she's like, by the end of that movie where she's on that airplane or whatever, and she's in that hangar and she's all by herself, and she finally can just sit down and not chase bin Laden anymore. I can feel that just pressure getting released from her at the end of that. She doesn't have to do this anymore. And I feel like also there might be, if your whole life has been dedicated to this one thing, you probably feel a little bit of weird sadness about it too.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. There's a finality to it. It's like probably in a very different way, like retiring from the NFL at like 31, and you're like, oh, even if like I'm at the top of my game and I have all the accomplishments, I'm 31 years old.
I think it's more that relief and remorse when you leave an abusive spouse, in that the abuse and that spouse have become so much a part of your identity. Like chasing bin Laden was all she was about for years. And you don't just turn that switch off and know how to fucking operate. Like she's going to have to learn how to human all over again.
None of it was pleasant, right? Like she was blocked at every step of the way, and she's chasing after this repugnant person. She's talking to repugnant people to get to this repugnant person. All of this was pain and misery. You're right.
Through 8 years of foul-smelling shit. I don't even want to imagine.
She and there's all sorts of different phases to this long amount of time too. At first, where nobody's talking, and she's actually involved in the torture of these people. Then to the point where the president's change and the philosophy about asking these people questions change, where her life becomes in danger because of that. Because now, they've got lawyers, and the lawyers can talk and say, well, this is the woman that's been doing all the torturing that you guys were talking about, to the point where she has to fight all these people trying to explain why she's right. And it's hard. It's very hard when you have as scant evidence as she has. in this, and I know that we're sitting there rooting for her, and we want her to succeed, and we know she's right. But think about the evidence that she has to like base all of this on, and has to base a whole Navy SEAL operation on. If you're wrong, then you've got Bin Laden probably on the move again and changing up a whole bunch of things, and there's no wonder it took so long for it to happen. Because they're going on this scant evidence and everything. It's that movie's just amazing to watch. It goes up against Interstellar. I mean, like I said, these two movies. How in the world do you pick between these two?
You know what's up with Interstellar? Like Casey Affleck is a douche.
Yeah,
and he wasn't a douche. The Timothée Chalamet version of Casey Affleck.
Yeah. Yeah.
He wasn't a douche, so he became a douche.
But he became a douche,
I guess, over those messages and all that.
He became a douche because he realized that he had basically come to the conclusion that their dad left them. He's already good with that. That's his truth in that movie. And
she believes that he's coming back, right? Because he says.
Well, no, she also thinks that he just left, but she's going to try to solve the problem at least. And I don't think she's getting to the point where she would put other people in danger, because I mean, like Casey Affleck's kid has got that,
the black lung.
Yeah, he's got the black lung, and he doesn't want to move or anything like that. He just wants to. I mean, that's even more douchey. But she doesn't. Yeah. I mean, obviously, she doesn't have a kid to have that same kind of decision. But she tells them, "You need to get the fuck out of here and treat your kid." And he's not having it. He's already sort of given up on having a cure for that.
Yeah, he's basically accepted fate, right?
Yeah.
Dad left, we're all going to die.
Mm-hmm.
And he's a fatalist, I guess, in that regard.
He really is.
He is a douche. He's not the only douche. Matt Damon's a pretty big douche.
Matt Damon is a big old fat douche.
All those Boston guys are douches.
Yeah.
I do love that reveal, though, because at least the first time I saw this movie, I never saw that coming. That maybe I was just too naive. Maybe I didn't realize the runtime was 2.5 or 2 hours and 45 minutes or whatever. But I didn't see him turning heel like that, and so it really kept me on my toes.
Yeah. I mean, I still have a lot of questions about that Tesseract thing at the end.
Yeah.
I think it is meant to be something that you're not supposed to totally understand, really. Because we don't think in that whatever fifth dimension that they were talking about in the movie, or how far they get in the dimensions? 5, 6. They talk about that being like a fifth dimension. Like it would, there's a like if a functioning 2D character were to enter a 3D world, they wouldn't know what they're watching. They wouldn't know what they're seeing. Whereas in the discussion about that being a fifth or sixth dimension or whatever, we as 3-dimensional people don't have the capability of understanding that.
What I do know is that the Tesseract is definitely Cobb's totem.
Oh yeah, exactly. it can only,
and it's at the bottom of the ocean.
It can only act one way, and that is to show a bunch of images of your daughter when she's 12 years old in her room, and if it doesn't do that, you're in somebody else's dream.
Hey, do they start? Do McConaughey and Hathaway start boning at the end of this movie? Not on screen, but do they get together at the end of this movie?
It is
implied. Were they ever
together? It's implied.
Oh, you mean the characters?
Yeah, it's implied because
they do in Serenity.
Because she goes to the planet. This is one of the themes of that movie, is that she goes to the planet that she wanted to go to in the first place because the dude that she loved was on that one planet, and she was like, I have no real scientific basis for it. It's just that I feel like this is the one. And of course, she goes there and finds out that guy's dead at this point. But after McConaughey has gone back and he's seen his daughter, who is now appears to be way older than he is, and he has nothing left for him on this new place that they're living. He's like, well, I think even it's his daughter that encourages him to go find Anne Hathaway.
Right. She says, like, go find him. But Anne Hathaway has gone to the planet already with her dude, but her dude is dead.
Yes.
And that's what opens
She's
up.
single.
I got you. I was wondering how that worked.
Well, everything's looking up McConaughey.
Wow, right.
So yeah, he's going out there, and I don't know if he, in his mind, he thinks, oh yeah, we're totally going to be boning when we get there. But maybe it's just that he needs to be around somebody who has been through the things he's been through, and the Earth or whatever. I can't remember what they're on some moon at the end of it.
Right. Yeah. It's a setup right next to the porthole to the universe.
Yes.
Yeah.
There's nothing here for me anymore. I can't understand this kind of life, but I can understand the kind of life that Anne Hathaway is about to have on that other planet. So
yeah, because they're the only two people in the universe that have ever really done this.
Yeah. So anyway, these are two movies I can't stand to see one of these leave, but one of them is going to have to. One of them's going to have to.
Who wants to start?
I'll start. I don't think this is as emotional for me. I love Interstellar, but it's Zero Dark 30 all the way for me. It's tighter. I'm nitpicking like crazy, but Interstellar, I really feel all 2 hours and 40 whatever minutes of that movie. And it sometimes feels like it's 2 hours and 40 minutes before they even go to space. Like 50 minutes before they even go to space.
It is a little lengthy, yeah.
And the Tesseract is a little difficult to really wrap my brain around, which is kind of the whole way the whole story works. Whereas, and the movie makes me feel feels and it turns on my brain, but Zero Dark 30 is just gripping from beginning to end, and that's my pick. Biatches.
So I get the same feeling, and even though I don't want this to be pejorative to the real life events, I get the same thing with Zero Dark 30. I think it drags a little bit for me towards the beginning and maybe a little bit in the middle. And yes, you're right. There are stretches in Interstellar where you feel the weight of the movie, but I'm okay with the weight of the movie. So I'm going to go Interstellar.
Wow. Whew. I was not expecting to have to decide on this one. I mean, to decide the bout. I am going with Interstellar on this one.
Wow.
You guys are making such bad decisions today.
Interstellar, especially, see, both of these movies both of them have 30-minute stretches that are impossible to look away from. The Navy SEAL raid is just another white knuckle thing. Now to think about it, but that whole back and forth between the home on Earth with Jessica Chastain and Casey Affleck, and then the thing with McConaughey and Damon, that whole thing is just something that just involves me heavily in that movie. And I just get so like wrapped up in Interstellar. And Zero Dark 30, as much as I love it, I think that Navy SEAL thing is the main thing for that movie, even though the journey getting to it is excellent. It's just that I feel like there's more in Interstellar. And also,
I was just joking. I should have let you explain before I told you your decision was bad. But yeah, no, this is we're splitting hairs here. So
we really are. I like. There's another universe where these two movies are nowhere near the same bracket, and they end up somewhere in the final four. And it's just the way of the beast, the way these brackets work. And I hate seeing Zero Dark 30 go, but that's the way it's going to happen.
But you love to watch it leave.
I do. Why didn't Jessica Chastain fuck anybody in those movies?
Or in The Martian.
That's right. That's right. Interstellar will go up against the winner of the 2 seed Get Out and the 10 seed Scott Pilgrim versus the World.
Whoa. Whoa, man.
Yeah, it's a tough one. Both of them, I think, have creative points. Like as much as Scott Pilgrim versus the World sort of announces itself as that, Get Out is a totally different kind of story. You've never seen anything like that before.
Nope. And you know what's funny? When we first reviewed Get Out, I made it's the name of the song I want to talk about. I actually made a negative comment that the movie takes a while to start because it has the musical interlude when Lakeith Stanfield gets attacked, and then it's got the crazy pan over the nature and the trees and stuff like that, where I think it's that big choral chanting music. And then it goes into the Childish Gambino song when we get to Chris's apartment, when we get to Daniel Kaluuya's apartment. Going back and watching that now, it's so necessary and it's so perfectly paced, and I was completely wrong. And especially that song that's playing when Norman Reedus, it's not Caleb Landry Jones.
I was sitting there going,
he looks the same.
Norman Reedus. Where did he play?
Norman Reedus. You mean the kid, the brother?
Yeah. When he kidnaps Lakeith Stanfield, the song that's playing "Run Rabbit Run" is very indicative of what the theme of the movie is. All this is so deliberate and all so perfect, and I love this movie so much.
Yeah, Get Out. Talk about a movie that you can watch multiple times and just keep finding new things. If it's not like some sort of image or some sort of situation, there's something like that where you're talking about with the song. You know,
yeah.
I mean, I never really thought about that before, the Run Rabbit Run song, because I don't think I've paid enough attention to that scene to know that song.
Well, at the time, I didn't even realize why would this it seems out of place for an otherwise perfectly paced movie, but it was perfectly placed, and I'm stupid. Yeah, no, I mean that Caleb Landry Jones character is played so menacingly that it'll send chills down your spine. It's crazy.
When he shows up, I think is when it starts to turn, right?
Yeah.
Because up until then, it's been weird and being so not racist, it makes me think you're racist. But the moment he shows up, it gets darker and scarier to where he wants to wrestle him, and it takes an edge from that moment on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And you can see in the family's reactions to him where they're kind of they're saying, "Oh, don't do that." But they're not really leaning into it. What you're saying is wrong. Right. They're just gently chastising him. And you're like, all right, there's even more going on.
Is that what's going on? Or is it more that they're a little bit worried that he'll give it away too early?
I think that's the reason they even say anything. Because otherwise they'd just be like, well, it'd be fine.
Yeah.
But he is going over the top so much that they're just kind of saying, but we don't know that at the time that we're watching this for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
But that's what's so unsettling to it is why aren't they chastising him more? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, and I think there's supposed to be a difference, right? I think he's supposed the girl she's clearly the good kid who has bought into the system. She keeps bringing new boyfriends home for them to whatever. Whereas he's the bad child, the one that keeps getting in trouble and is impatient and doesn't play the role all the way through. And so he's the one that threatens the balance too soon, like you said. So, God, such a great movie.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then Get Out is going up against Scott Pilgrim versus the World. Another movie that is 10 years old.
Wow.
We had 2010 was representing for sure in this bracket.
And this is when Michael Cera and Jesse Eisenberg were the same person.
They kind of were. They're both hyperactive type of. Although don't know, Sarah. I don't know if I ever made that sort of. I mean, I'm sure they were going for the same roles a lot back then. But Eisenberg feels a little bit more coffee nervous than Michael Cera does.
Sarah, yeah, I could see that.
Cera plays, I think, a little bit more understated in his roles, whereas Eisenberg is always up in your face. I'm talking to this. I'm talking like this. Blah 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 blah. You know. But yeah, I didn't expect anything from this. I thought it was weird that Edgar Wright was making this movie. When I saw Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz, I was like, this is so different. This is like one of those movies that somebody makes when they finally get to go to America and they get to make their movie. And although this is Canada, but it's always
close enough.
It's always so different. It's always like and for the most part, like it is, because it's got that comic book flavor to it, but it's a very Edgar Wright movie.
Mm-hmm.
Total. Oh, I didn't even realize, even though it's very obvious, that this comes in the middle of the Cornetto trilogy, right? Like, because this is the end comes. Is it? This is the
no.
end?
It's
the world's end.
World.
It's
Dead Man's Chest.
Yeah, yes, it's the world's end.
World's end. You're right. It is so weird that he broke up, that trilogy. I guess it was just availability and funding and stuff like that to do this.
Mm-hmm.
But you don't think about that. You think of that Cornetto trilogy coming out kind of sequentially.
Yeah. But it's just I thought, looking at the trailers and everything, I was like, this is going to go over the top in a way that I'm going to hate. But it actually ends up being over top in the way that I love. So, all right. So it goes up against Get Out. I can easily say that I'm picking Get Out here.
This ain't even a contest right here. I love Scott Pilgrim probably more than any of the three of us, and Get Out's on a whole different level.
I was going to vote for Get Out.
Get Out is the unanimous choice to move on against Interstellar.
If it were Canadian, it would be Get Oot.
Get Oot, yes. It would be. It would be. Let's look at our Sweet 16 real quick, and then we'll sign off. Over in the North region, we have Mad Max Fury Road going up against The Nice Guys. Then we have La La Land versus Hell or High Water. Then we have Inception versus Spotlight in the East region. The Raid 2 versus The Martian.
Wow.
And then over here, the Sweet 16 that we just solved today, Parasite is against The Cabin in the Woods. The Big Short.
What a crazy upset on both of those.
Yeah, no kidding. The Big Short versus Her, Ex Machina versus The Wolf of Wall Street, and Interstellar versus Get Out.
Wow.
Wowzers.
And those are even though some of these are obviously weird choices to get to the 16, I love this 16.
Yeah, me too.
That's here. I know that there are a couple in there that I would like over the ones that are still in, but they had to go up against they had to go up against other movies in their respective brackets. So
yeah,
it's just the way just the way it goes.
This should be weird.
Should be weird. It is right. Okay, so what did you guys think of this so far? And I'm trying to think of what we might be doing next week. Do you think we'll be doing the whole Sweet 16, or we do a half of it?
That's only 8 matchups, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we do the whole thing.
Yeah, we're going to do the whole Sweet 16.
Yeah.
So yeah, go over those if you haven't seen some of these movies. But go to SinCast presented by Cinemasins on Facebook, which we badmouthed earlier in this episode. But go over there and give us some comments on this episode. We can also go to Cinemasins Twitter, Music Video Sins Twitter. We're on SoundCloud. We're also on Discord. If you want to get on Discord, you can go to our Reddit page and find a link on the right side, or you can go to the Facebook page and private message me, and I will give you a link there. But that's going to do it for this week. It's Chris Atkinson, Jeremy Scott, and Barrett Scher. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening. Comment on our episodes on our SoundCloud page. Check us out on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and Reddit. And be sure to visit cinemasins.com.
don't click out.
Don't click out. That means me too.
Just don't click. Just don't click.
We managed to work in a Wolf of Wall Street outtake where the dude goes, I will not die sober. Get the loot. Can I start the recording? Okay. All right.
How do I chat on this bitch?
That guy, man. I don't even know how you stay in the shape that he's in, given the stuff that he can do. You know what I mean?
Yeah, he's spry for a tubby guy.
Mm-hmm.
It's like Chris Farley coming out and doing the Chippendales dance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wasn't that like there was some acting obviously, but wasn't Swayze like genuinely like shocked that he could actually do that?
I think so. I mean, I think everybody was.
Oh my God.
What's
hilarious, the best thing is that Kevin Nealon never broke like for a second.
No.
I can't, like, can you imagine being in that room and not laughing?
No. Although, to his credit, well, not to his credit, to take credit away from Kevin Nealon, they probably rehearsed it several times.
That's true, but he was looking at it like almost clinically. He was like, I like what you did there. Okay. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
It really just comes down to the body. He's just got a much better body. I'll tell you what, man, that Krasinski is killing it right now.
Boy.
You know, I mean, so Quiet Place 2 has been indefinitely delayed, right?
I think it's looking at the fall or Christmas.
Okay. But yeah, that whole Chris sent that Hamilton thing that he did.
Yeah.
That he somehow, or Lin-Manuel Miranda, arranged. And it was, it's so awesome.
Yeah. I got chills, man.
I did too. Oh my God. Because I had never heard I may have heard it, but I don't have the relationship with the original cast recording like you guys do.
Yeah.
And that was really cool seeing Daveed Diggs and all those guys.
Man, it was all of them too. Like even the people who are just like dancers and chorus members from the original cast, they got them all, man. That was awesome.
That video is the Krasinski video is really fun, and I recommend that above everything. But they're all, if you want to see the original cast, you can also find the video of them doing it for President Obama a few years ago. At least doing maybe two or three songs. I can't remember how many songs it was, but they're in some sort of I don't know, meeting hall place or whatever, and there's a bunch of fold out chairs or something like that for everybody to watch them. I'm sure they did the whole thing, but like for YouTube they have like 2 or 3 videos for it. So I would watch that too.
It's amazing. You know, when we saw Hamilton in Nashville, the Hamilton moment, the reveal, what's your name? Alexander Hamilton. Like that's a real showstopper. Like everybody just like, woo! And then to see that with Lin-Manuel Miranda staring into a Skype screen with fucking like
yeah.
that line, I still got the same kind of feeling. It was like, that's awesome.